Welcome back to Box 2 in partnership with Best Western Hotels GB, who are currently rolling out their exciting Year of Free Breakfast campaign. Sign up for Best Western rewards for free and book direct using their free breakfast rate to enjoy free breakfast throughout 2025. Visit bestwestern.co.uk/free breakfast to find out more. Terms and conditions apply. I'm delighted as our special guest for today's episode. We're joined by former Leeds Tykes Director of Rugby, Phil Davies, now the Director of Rugby for World Rugby. So we'll get onto that later on. A very grand time. I saw a comment, Phil, that you are the most powerful Welshman in World Rugby. So we'll dive into that a little bit later on. We'll also talk about Phil's time here with Leeds Tykes and how he used to work with the Leeds Rhinos as well and the coaching staff with those guys. And then we'll also talk about the future of rugby of both codes and how Phil sees that shaping up. Phil, it's great to have you back here. It's the 20th anniversary of Leeds Tykes' finest day when they won the Powergen Cup at Twickenham. The Leeds Rhinos boys were there that day. They were in the stands cheering on. Great to see you. First of all, how are you? How's things?
Yeah, good, Phil. Great to be back. It's great to see Headingley from when I arrived about, I think, 29 years ago. It's a long time. We both arrived roughly the same time, as you know. To see the way the stadium's grown since then has been fantastic, and the success the Rhinos have had as well has it's been great to see, you know.
If I can take you back, Phil, back to your playing days, obviously 46 caps for Wales, you're one club man down at Hetherington until you came north to play Rugby Union with Leeds. You had tremendous success you won the Premier League and the Welsh Cup on a number of occasions with the Scarlets. But take us back to that time, and particularly relevant for Rugby League fans perhaps watching this. You were part of a Welsh side over a long period from 1988. It's actually 1985. It's 40 years ago this month when you made your debut for Wales against England with a certain Jonathan Davies, your brother-in-law, debut on the same game. Taking you back to that period in time, it was a real transition for Welsh rugby and what was to come in probably the next decade ahead, when Rugby League in particular really sort of took that side apart, really.
And you know, the good reasons for that. For at the time, Rugby Union wasn't a professional game, as you know. Rugby League was, so it was an opportunity for the players to, you know, to earn a living out of playing a sport they loved. Although it was, you know, 30-man game, certain different rules, but you know they all made a success of it. And as you say, no more so than Jonathan. I think he had a fantastic Rugby League career. But at the time, it was quite devastating for the Welsh team. You know, we built the team, Jonathan and I, as you mentioned, had our first caps in 85, and then there was a bit of a transition, 86, 87, 88, where we finished third in the first Rugby World Cup in New Zealand. We won the Triple Crown in 88, had a couple of successful tours. So we were building something really, really special. Then all of a sudden, most of the team goes, you know. And it was a big transition between 88, 89, 90, whatever. And then we got a little bit back on the horse, if you like, in terms of outcome success by 92, 93, 94, where we won the Five Nations Championships, as it was back then. So it was an interesting time. And, you know, I got offered to play Rugby League myself a few times, but I just, you know, I never came. And when I did say I was coming to Leeds, people said, "You're a bit old to go and play Rugby League." Well, I was 32 then, not too old, but I said, no, I'm going to coach. So that was an interesting conversation with a lot of people. But yeah, it was an interesting time, great time in many ways, but also challenging because of the transitions. And when you're losing great players like Jonathan, Moriarty, Devro, Scott Gibbs went a little bit later, you know, so it was tough. But you get through it, obviously, and you carry on.
Yeah, well, I made a note of the players who ended up playing for Wales Rugby League, who were Welsh Rugby Union internationals as well. I mean, you look, it's who's who have played: John Devereux, Alan Bateman, Jonathan Griffiths, Di Young, Mark Jones, Rob Ackerman, Paul Moriarty, Di Bishop, Adrian Hadley, Roland Phillips, Gary Pearce, Richard Webster, Scott Gibbs and Scott Quinnell. I mean, it's a hell of a side.
Second with you. I watched them play a few times. I remember one game they played, what did they play? They played, it was a World Cup, I think. They played Samoa at the Vetch Field in Swansea, Swansea City's old ground before they moved to the new Swansea City Stadium. And all those guys were playing, and it was a hell of a game. An amazing game, packed vetch field. Atmosphere was amazing, and it was brutal. It was a phenomenal game of rugby, and Wales actually came out winners that night. But when you look at the talent there, and a few of them came back to Rugby Union, as you know, after their league careers finished. So it was good some of them came back. But yeah, we had a heck of a team then. In the Welsh Rugby League team was outstanding, as you've highlighted there, Phil.
And I know back in the 60s, when there was the last sort of big invasion of Welsh players into league, there was a lot of animosity back in Wales towards those guys who'd gone north. Had that changed because obviously Rugby Union was edging closer and closer to going professional anyway? Did that was there any animosity to those guys who'd gone? Obviously, Jonathan would have come back to see you guys. Yeah,
he came back and played. He played at Cardiff actually when I was. Yeah, he went back when I was still here. Obviously, still in Leeds. So, I don't think so. No. Not from the the playing and coaching population. I think when you're actually, there's a difference for me for when you're in the game and when you're around the game. And I think there'll always be people who have different views if they're around the game. But if you're in the game, you understand. And I think during that period, although disappointment would be the first word you use because you're losing great players, but ultimately, then good luck to them. They're going to make a living out of playing rugby and albeit rugby league at the time. However, then Rugby Union went professional in 1995 anyway. So we moved on in that respect. So no, I don't think so. I remember I used to Brian Butler, Roy Mathias, Paul Prendeville, some of those guys have moved. John Wallow even a bit earlier. The late great Ken Jones, obviously, he was a pioneer back in the day, as you all know, and had a brilliant career here. So those guys I used to love talking to them about rugby league after games. They used to come and watch us play for Llanelli. Very direct. If you played well, they'd buy you a beer. If you played badly, they'd walk the other way. So, but it was great fun. So, I think everybody from Wales who came here enjoyed their time, basically, whatever era it was. And I think everything has obviously changed a lot nowadays. It's recognised as a great sport. You don't see so many converts now, I don't think, but it's still, I love rugby league, as you know. After all my time here, I got to know, the grassroots of it all, and it's just, I think it's a brilliant game, and it's great to see the two sports doing well.
Yeah, that neatly brings us on to your decision to come up to Yorkshire. You were a one club man. You were very proud to play for the Scarlets. What was it that was sold you on the vision at Leeds? And because when you came, it was Leeds Rugby Union. Hadn't quite become Leeds Tykes at that stage, but they were already playing here at AMT Headingley. Yeah,
I get goosebumps thinking about it now. As you were saying, do you know what, Phil? I'm not. This is a crazy answer maybe, but it just felt right. I don't know. Robert Jones, my Welsh teammate, he played for Swansea, I played for Llanelli, but as the game went professional, we had an opportunity to stay playing at home at the time, because Llanelli wasn't a region then, or we could have gone to Harlequins. Dick Best was the England Lions coach. We could have gone there to play. But I was never the quickest player, but I had a quick brain, but maybe not quick legs. But I was struggling a bit with some injuries, so I didn't want to carry on playing, and I'd always loved the leadership. I'd captained Llanelli for 6 years. I'd been in the leadership team with the Welsh setup, so I wanted a coach. And Mike Palmer-Jones phoned me up on sort of Colin Stevens' recommendation, if you like. And Colin had come up here the year before to play for Leeds. And anyway, I just drove up. I drove into Headingley. I went to the Parkway Hotel, I think, on Otley Road, I think it is. And crazy, it just felt right. I'd met anybody, and it was dark, it was pitch black as well. Bizarre. I thought, I feel at home here. It was strange in some ways. And that was it. And we talked and we chatted. I went home and we chatted a bit more. And I said to my wife, I think it's a good idea, this. And she went, okay. And we moved. The kids were 8 and 6 at the time and had a wonderful time here. Great school. We had a fabulous time. But it was as simple as that. It just felt, my gut feeling was, this is the right move at the right time, so to speak. So off I went. Off we went.
And you mentioned there you always loved rugby league and spent time around. And I think these days it's very common to have a rugby league. We see Kevin Sinfield doing a fantastic job with England. Lee Radford's done great things at Northampton. Just to think of two off the top of my head there. But back then it wasn't quite that openness to new ideas. But I always remember you were really open to that, and you loved picking Graham Murray's brain or Tony Smith's or Brian McDermott. You were constantly asking for feedback.
Yeah, they were good, and Steve Walsh as well on the conditioning side when Walshy was here with Brian when they were doing the role. I think the academy as well as the first team with Tony. Oh yeah, it's huge. I learned that over the time. Wayne Smith, the great All Black coach, and he's a mentor to the New Zealand Rugby Union coaches now. He always had that open-mindedness about sharing. And then you get other people who've got a mentality of I'm not saying anything to you, but I always had that open-mindedness. And I remember, we had Wendell Saylor came here and played for us in '98. We had Richie Blackmore playing for us. Richie played in the centre. He was outstanding, that fella. Wendell wasn't bad, by the way, but he only came for a short period. But Richie made a real impact for us. And then Graham Mackay was the other one, if you remember. Macca came and played, and he was superb. He got us promoted. If we ever needed the fourth try, we'd just give him the ball. He was a big fella. So I was always open-minded to that stuff. Brian McDermott, I remember him doing reaction drills at Kirkstall, firing these tennis balls at the boys to improve their reaction, and his boxers' feet, boxers' hands from a tackling technique point of view. So that cross-pollination, I think, was very, very important. And Stuart Lancaster bought into that as well. And it was brilliant. It was great. We'd all been in the office at 6:30 when we moved to Kirkstall type of thing, and it was just a wonderful time. And to pick the brains of coaches who've been professional a lot longer than we had, of course. And Simon Middleton was our first most successful convict. He played for Cass. At the time, we needed a try scorer, so we spoke to him. He was finishing his rugby league career, came playing for Otley. Actually, he started playing for Otley. Then he came to us, and ultimately went on to be coach, our defence coach, when we won the Power Gen Cup. And then he went on to a phenomenal career with England. So he's doing a bit of work for World Rugby at the moment. So I've sort of caught up with him very recently as well, which is lovely,
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to age you now. Wendell Say, I remember him come over for that three month spell. I think it was Filed where he beat every man on the pitch twice to score a try. I think you'll find check that out on YouTube if you've not seen that one before. But now, of course, his son's now playing in Super League for St Helens Tristan, who was a babe in arms when Wendell came. So we're all feeling old when we think back on that one. And that period, because obviously Leeds Tykes were in the fourth tier of English rugby then. So you'd been successful. You'd played for Wales. You'd won with Hetherington. Presumably it was a big challenge to go, right, I can see a vision here that I can take to the very top of European rugby.
Yeah, the key was this place, really. When I walked in here first with Mike Bidgood, I think, and Mike Palmer-Jones to show around, this is where we're going to play, I went, wow. Because obviously I'd known about Headingley from Jonathan's time in Rugby League, and Jonathan, introduced me to Harry Jepson, God bless him at the time, and Alf Davis was the CEO here then. So it was great meeting those guys, and obviously the history around the place was amazing. And I always felt, right, okay, we got a stadium that can hold, top class sporting, top class rugby if we ever got there. So we did have a crazy dream, really, and it was right. Come on, let's go. We're off. And it was like we talked a lot. We were playing clubs like Otley, Morley, Wakefield. The sort of local derbies were incredible at that time. But we just not in a boastful way, but just in a really ambitious, humble type of way. As you know, Phil, we said, look, this is what we want to do. This is where we want to go, and we started talking a lot about. We wanted an academy. We couldn't afford it, but we got a coach team together with Roger Pullen, and Stu Lancaster was involved a little bit in that as well at the time, and we got to the 2 Coach Cup finals. But that sort of gave people the understanding that how important young people were, young talent was important to develop for the club, because we needed identity. We didn't have an identity. We didn't have an environment where people felt they belonged, so to speak. So we had to do all of those things, and the academy started, and the coach team started helping that. We played Fiji, Tonga here, if you like, to create a little bit of history of playing international teams, and we did. They'd obviously, Headingley had played international teams, and the North had played international teams over the time, but never a Leeds team. So it was all those things which I love, and it was brilliant to be able to be part of that from the very start and sort of sketch out the journey. It didn't go in a straight line, that's for sure, but it never does with us passionate Welshmen. But the support we had was just phenomenal over the time, and it was something I look back on, one of the best experiences of my life, really. yeah, that's how it all started, really.
Yeah, we'll come back to the academy talent and the talent within Yorkshire a bit later on. But I mean, it was a bit of a perfect storm because you come up before Leeds Rugby had been created, but then obviously Paul and Gary come in. Paul being an ex-Rugby Union player and had played at Headingley and Castleford, and Gary knowing that he had to create a business here. The Leeds Rugby League was on its uppers and needed to create a business and an all year round stadium. You know, you can't create more Rugby League games, but if you can create this new window that was in the winter because Rugby League had moved to summer, it was a sensible business decision.
Oh yeah, it was a phenomenal decision. You know, it was brilliant. You came and we were the first World Rugby partnership, if you remember. I don't know if it's still at the bottom of the letterheads, but it used to be back in the day. And what I loved about Gary and Paul is it was always front facing stuff. You know, if they had a problem, they tell you about it. But what I loved about them, you never sort of die wondering. They'd always tell you, right, this is what we need to do, blah blah blah. Or this is what you want to do. This is the finance, if you like, we've got. And I think we, you know, a lot of the time, Phil, I think that innovation and that openness to speak to different people, to try different things was very important because we always had to work within our means. And you know, in the Premiership, we were there for 5 years, and I think we had an average finish of 10th. Before the end of the 5th year when we did get relegated. But you know, I think we overachieved. A lot of the times we had 2 European campaigns in the Heineken Cup, playing Toulouse here, who at the time were the champions of Europe, you know, and get into a couple of semi-finals and one final of the Power Gen, and you know, we were top of the league at, I think it was our 2nd year, top of the Premiership at one stage. So I think we overachieved, but I think it was our collectiveness and team working and understanding, really. They were just really, really clear. You know, and even to this day, they're the best CEO and chairman I've worked for by a mile because of that clarity, that drive, support, passion, all of those things were, and we all made a good team. You know, the three of us plus yourself and a lot of people who are still here now and people who were not here, but just great teamwork and real clear direction of where we wanted to go, but more importantly, how we were going to get there. You know.
And the public did begin to buy in at time. I remember we had 14,000 here for a game against Newcastle. We had 8,000 for a game against Gloucester. The crowds were beginning to grow. Superstar signings came to the club. People like Justin Marshall came. You know, he just won Man of the Series for the All Blacks against the British Lions when he arrived. But it just that 5-year journey wasn't able to create anything sustainable.
We didn't. When I look back, we didn't. That team, we'd always been a real hard-working group of guys. And I remember we used to speak Dan Hyde, Mike Shelley, it'd be great if you could get this one, or that type of player, you know. And I was always forensic about the characteristics of the person. You know, we'd had Bram van Straten. We needed a goal kicker, so we looked. He was the best goal kicker in the world at the time, Bram. So we got him here. But his impact was not just kicking goals and playing for the first team. It was everything else that was going on. You know, he was great with the young players. He was good with the community work. So it was always trying to get that. And that team, that 5th year, I don't think we got the dynamics right. You know, we didn't get that right, we didn't gel the team, and that was my responsibility, really. We didn't perhaps gel the team like we could have, and that year, it was a year I ended up leaving, and it was a year the club went down. But we were lucky that we had Stuart Lancaster, which was always a succession plan. When Stu started in the academy, and he's gone on to be a great coach, as we all know. But you know, it was always that was a succession plan in my head, in our heads, really. The only thing was, it was me as the director of rugby and him as the head coach, because it was becoming a 2-man job, and it is nowadays. But back then, you know, I was doing, as you know, we were all doing a lot of things, and sometimes that overtook a few things. So. But it was, you know, the whole journey was immense, really, when we look back.
And then there was after you'd left, there was that transition period from Leeds Tykes to Leeds Carnegie to Yorkshire Carnegie. You mentioned Stuart Lancaster got the team up, but they were relegated again, and then they had a couple of seasons under Neil Back and Andy Key. But do you think where we are now as a game, the way what's happened with Rugby Union, particularly in England, a team doing what you were able to do from the 4th division to build up to the Heineken Cup, is that possible within club rugby in England now? I
think anything is possible, Phil. You know, as as we all know, in life. But I think maybe probably not the way the game perhaps is structured. And I'm not that close to where the championship is at the moment. In England, there is promotion and relegation, as we know, I think, this year. But I think there's caveats in terms of ground capacities and things. I was talking to Gordon Ross a little bit about it last night because he's coaching at Coventry now. So I think there's a caveat in terms of stadia, and I don't think anybody's met the criteria for promotion this time around. So I think it's still possible, but it's having someone with long pockets maybe who can support a journey. But again, if you look at Cornish Pirates, for example, if you focus on England, they've got an amazing catchment area. They've been looking at building a stadium for years and years, and that's something with Cornwall. It's like Yorkshire. It's massive. And maybe there's an opportunity for that to happen. Why can't Leeds do it again? I don't know, but I think it's possible. But at the moment, it's maybe probably not, in terms of there's a lot of obstacles now that perhaps weren't there when we tried to do it. But our journey was not in a straight line. As you know, Rotherham beat us to the promotion 1 year, but then we got promoted the next year. We had Worcester, who had Cecil Duckworth, God bless him, his support over many years, and they were quite, phenomenal. So yeah, it's an awesome opportunity, but you've got to get people who want to go on that journey, and it's not an easy journey financially or from a talent perspective either. It takes a lot of building.
Yeah, you mentioned Graham Mackay earlier on. He was instrumental in that win over Worcester. They couldn't handle him that day. That big bald head was running all over the place. We talked about the academy earlier on and what yourself and Stuart Lancaster were able to set up within that. I look at the England internationals who came through that pathway. Danny Kerr, Luther Burrell, Jack Walker, Paul Hill, Callum Clark, Jordan Crane and Rob Webber all went from the academy into the England national side. There's obviously a great talent pool of young rugby union players within Yorkshire. There's no professional club pathway for them to go. There's obviously the Yorkshire RFU Academy, but there's no club attached to that now. Do you think that's something that Rugby League should be looking at in terms of players outside of the traditional Rugby League catchment clubs actually looking at young rugby union talent?
Yeah, we got a problem in Wales at the moment. In terms, I'm talking about union players going to play union, but going across the bridge to school, or to Filton College in Bristol's got an excellent rugby program. So that's happened. I think it's down to the players, like you said to me earlier on. Now your kids are playing rugby union and rugby league, and it's. I think it's down to the kids. The important thing for me is that they play rugby. That's the most important thing. And in the job I do now, I think it's 7.9 million. I only know that stat because somebody told me it the other day, playing rugby union around the world, and we'd like to grow that number, and we're looking at different sort of different versions of the sport. We have touch rugby now, but we have non-contact rugby as well, which has been all good for me back in the day. But we're always looking to grow the game. I think again, like we said earlier, Phil, I think it's about exploring things and not sort of saying, this is how we've always done it, fine, but times change and you have to look at different ways. So I think, look, as long as the kids are playing rugby, I believe that's the most important thing, whether it's league or union. In some ways, that comes down to their choice,
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Wales, playing for the Welsh national team would have been every young boy's, and now every young girl can have that dream as well. Yeah, but have you seen, sort of anecdotally, are those numbers going down? Has football become more of a goal for young kids in Wales? I
think football's popular, and they've created a wonderful atmosphere at the Cardiff City Stadium with the singing and well, singing in particular is phenomenal in the rugby games, but it's really taken off. But that's always been, Phil. Football has always been a popular sport. Well, it's a popular sport everywhere, but particularly in North Wales, there's always been a real big support for football, and rugby has developed over a period of time in North Wales. Rugby Union has, and they've a side now in the second tier of Welsh Rugby and Super League Cymru. It's a new competition that's come out this year. They are still in there, North Wales, and the catchment area there is huge because you can go into the northwest of England if you want, So yeah, I think it's all about how you try and grow it. But kids have got so many different, as we all know. I got a granddaughter now, and she's interested in a lot of art or whatever, but she's not interested in rugby as such. But she's played a little bit. and she does enjoy it, but that's not her passion. I think it's kids have so many options, and if they develop a passion for something, brilliant if it's sport, I think, because the camaraderie, the teamwork, the discipline, the hard work, all of those things, I think are good for us as humans, if you like. So, but there's so many different opportunities nowadays. It's trying to make sure that you can keep sport, and in our case Rugby League, Rugby Union, at the forefront of their minds, and that's a challenge. But everyone's trying all different ideas to keep trying to grow sport generally, but rugby in particular, as we.
Yeah, and the things that you learnt through playing sport, through playing rugby. I remember you were one of the first coaches that I ever worked with who was already thinking about that. How do I take what I've learnt from rugby into a business environment and speak in front of business leaders and the importance of teamwork, or whether it was sacrifice or being an expert or just doing your job, things like that. And you talked about how I remember you going to speak to businesses when it's pretty commonplace now, but you're one of the first people I remember doing it. You obviously saw that there was a lot of qualities that you can get from sport that can be applied in business.
Yeah, I remember going back to the Colts, the Leeds Rugby Union Colts team, and we didn't have any money basically. So I went, where did I go? Sulzer Pumps in Leeds, and I went to Boss Trucks in Leeds. I said, look, this is what we're trying to do, blah blah blah, and it was an investment in young people. That's how they saw it, and they did, and they bought us a kit. And give us funding, for buses to go and play different games and everything. So it was, it was that sort of angle we took, was young people, developing young people and giving young people opportunity. And then he bought into that, to be fair. And then over the years, you do all sorts of different things, like, Leeds Building Society, as you well know, were a brilliant supporter of ours back in the day. And, you'd speak to Ian Ward, who was the CEO, their chairman there at the time, and we'd always talk about leadership and teamworking and all that sort of stuff. And it's an environment, really. It's building an environment with good habits, having a real clear focus on what you're trying to do, and making sure that everybody within that process feels valued. They have a sense of belonging, they feel you trust. So it's all about direction and clarity, Phil, really, I think, and creating the environment to achieve what you want to achieve, whether it's in business or sport. And it's I don't think that changes, and I think it's a good cross-pollination. I think we can learn a lot off business to an extent as well, but trying to apply the business of sport, not the business of business in sport, if that makes any sense. And I think that's where Gary was over the time, and Paul were brilliant, and obviously Gary's still at it here. So
yeah, and we've seen how business can impact on sport, particularly in rugby union with clubs, well-established clubs. You mentioned Worcester earlier on, when Cecil Duckworth set up. They've now gone. London Irish, which famous old gold club. Wasps, who moved to that incredible facility in Coventry. It just shows you've got to have those both heads on it. You can't just be sport doing it. The business has got to work as well.
There was a guy. He's a South African fella, and we did a conference in Cape Town or Stellenbosch a few years ago, and he talked about budgeting to a few of the African unions. And he said, the worst thing you can do in sport really is budget on hope, not budget on fact. So we call it the red budget, really, which is more, look, this is what we got now, and if we want to get there, we've got to do certain things to allow us to become sustainable. So it's about how you can create a long-term sustainability, because everybody can sell a dream, can't they? They can all sell a vision, but the realities are then of how you're going to achieve that. And again, going back to our time here together, that's where I've always felt, Gary and Paul Caddick were brilliant. If we were going to do something, there was a financial implication to that. So we had to make sure that we made more of less at times. When we did have a bit more, we had to be really, prioritise them. And is it necessary or not nice? I've heard that. No doubt you have. We've heard that statement 1,000 times over the years. But it's a good way of doing it. And it allows you to be, long-term get long-term sustainability in your programs and in your business. And that's maybe with some of those clubs, perhaps, I don't know for sure, but I do know what happened at Worcester a little bit firsthand, because I worked there and I saw sometimes there was a lot of nice stuff that weren't necessarily necessary at the time. So, yeah, it's that's the way to do it. And I think sport can learn a lot from that type of approach that business take, you know.
Yeah, we always had to budget in for the bit of a fix on a door or a physio bed just in case a rallying call from you at half time to fire the lads up. A bit old school that, Phil. I'm sure you've
come on a little bit since then, Phil. But there's
know.
nothing wrong with a bit of passion
Exactly.
at times.
And we'll talk about your current role. You've been in since 2022, Director of Rugby at World Rugby. You've been described as the most powerful Welsh man in World Rugby. Tell us what the role involves and you know, how it came about.
Yeah, well, I know if I'm the most powerful. I'm definitely not the most powerful. Put it that way. There's a lot of interesting people there. Bill Beaumont was a recent chairman, and Bill interviewed me for the role with Bernard Laporte at the time, who was his vice chair. And the CEO, and the guy I work with, Mark Harrington, was a great guy. He's again a real measured leader, really like Gary and Paul, always lets you get on with the job, and it's good. So, yeah, I'd interviewed for the Welsh Rugby Union job with Nigel Walker actually, so that was a great experience. Nigel was a great operator. Nigel got the job, and then a bit disappointed. But a couple of weeks later, this role came up, and Dave Sleman, who was in our coach team back in the day, would you believe, because he studied at Leeds University. His dad was Mike Sleman, the old England winger who played back in the 80s, late 70s, 80s. So anyway, we started chatting, and I was looking to move out the coaching and become more of a director of rugby type of role, which is all the off-the-field stuff, really. And I just started chatting to him, and I said, look, this is where my thoughts are. I just outlined everything to him, and although he knew me as a sort of a coach from his time here, and he was only here for about a year, I think, because it was his last year at college when we had the coach team, I think it was. I said, look, this is what my passions are, this is how I set things up, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And he just put me forward for the role with a couple of other people, obviously. So we just had an interview process, 3 interviews, I think it was, and said, would you like to have the job? I said, yes, please. So, yeah, I've been doing it for 3 years. I got 4 pillars to my role. You know, one of it is the shape of the game, they call it, which is the direction of the game. Where is it going with the laws? I work with colleagues on ideas there. We interact with coaches, players, match officials, other key stakeholders in the game to see how we can grow the game in that regard. Then there's the refereeing space, which is really challenging. But we have a coaching department now in refereeing. We have a talent ID department. We didn't have that before. It was all very much operational. Get ready for the Six Nations, men's, women's, get ready for the autumn internationals, get ready for the World Cup, blah, 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 you know. So we put more of a performance analysis and coaching strategy around the refereeing. And we need to build the numbers of women referees. We've only currently got 3 full-time refs, but hopefully by 29 we'll have maybe 10, 12 around the world in different unions. And then I got research with Leeds Beckett at one of our law labs, we call them. So any ideas that come from research or any ideas from coaches, players, you know, we have lots of think tanks, working groups. We'll put those into a coaching environment. Previously, it was all into competitions. But we have law labs, as we call them now. So they go into coaching ideas. We go into a coaching environment. We get refs, players, and coaches there. And we look at, I don't know, kick chase, different tackle technique, for example, breakdown, whatever it might be. So Leeds Beckett are one of our law lab partners. Cardiff Met as well. So 2 places close to my heart, which is great. But good people in there as well, really open-minded. And got one in Hong Kong. And one in South Africa. So we're looking to grow that. We don't need too many, but it's a great opportunity to involve the game, if you like, in growing the game. Yeah. And then I do a little bit of work with the likes of Namibia and Holland and, you know, Nicky Ponsford, who's an ex-England international rugby player. Nicky's the high-performance director. And she looks after that space, but I help with match officiating pieces and sometimes talk to the coaches, help the coaches from my own experience at coaching at that level, coaching at World Cup. So it's a big role, but it's great, and I get to just fly around the world talking about rugby, which is quite a privilege, really. So yeah, so it's quite good.
And in terms of, I mean, I think people see new laws, new rules come in both codes, and you everyone's sort of scratching their head, or where's this coming? But it's fascinating to see the work that goes on beforehand to get to, and we've seen, haven't we, in both codes, the last few years have been a challenge, particularly around the tackle height and changing how the game has looked, good or bad, previously to how we want, both codes want the game to look going forward.
Yeah, I was blown away, Phil, with the amount of research, and quite rightly as well. And player welfare is our number one priority, as we keep saying, and it is. And it's about the safety and it's about the spectacle, but it's safety, safety, spectacle, and the challenge is to marry those two together. Really, is not easy at times. But I don't think I think the game has never been safer. I think in rugby union, we are, just on a high level answer. We're leading the world in research about how to make the game safer. We're doing a lot of work with tackle height. France I think they're 4th or 5th year into lowering the tackle height. I can't remember, somebody said a crazy statistic, hundreds of thousands of tackles we've actually coded. We've got the mouth guards, as you well know, they're a phenomenal innovation, those things. And if a player now gets a certain impact over a certain G-force, there'll be alert comes on the side through the iPad, as you know, and they get taken off for a HIA, head injury assessment, and then they come back on if they're fine, or they don't if they're not. So I think the game is never been safer in many ways, and the work that everyone is trying to do is fantastic to make the game safe, obviously, but we also need it to be a good spectacle, and it is a contact sport, or sometimes as a Welshman you love the evasion piece, so there is inevitable contact, scrums, lineouts, mauls, rucks, tackles, etc. And it is a complex sport as well. And when people say simplify the laws, trust me, it is not easy. And we got far brighter people than I try to do it as well. But between us, we're just trying to make it safer, easier to follow. I think we're starting to communicate. Referees are starting to communicate in stadiums now in terms of big decisions, as you know. You've seen it in the Six Nations. It's starting to happen in the domestic league as well. Carl Dixon refereed Bristol, I think, and Exeter the other week, and his formal reviews were put out onto the stadium mics. So people are going away and, okay, I get that, rather than just sitting there looking at the TMO and there's no explanation, penalty or yellow card. Now we've got that. So I think that's helping as well. So we're trying, various other ways of just, again, trying to make it safer, make it more of a spectacle.
Yeah, I think in the modern world, people expect to have things explained. It's no good just handing out, well, he must know all the laws, I'll leave this in. They expect that, don't they, when they're watching sport? And you talk about collaborative and how Union League can work together. I mean, great example, you mentioned Leeds Beckett there, but I know Professor Ben Jones up there does a lot of work with the RFU and Premiership Rugby and obviously the RFL as well. So, a lot of the solutions, or a lot of the ways forward, are going to be fit both codes, aren't they? So going forward, I mean, we mentioned about collaboration there. I don't know if you saw last year we had a fundraising game here for the M&D community for great Ed Slater down at Gloucester, ex-Leicester and Gloucester, and in memory of Rob and Doddy, a dual code game. Where we tried to get the best of both worlds. The Union lads weren't happy about the scrum. They thought it should have been a bit more intense. But could you ever see a point in the future where that we'd be perfectly positioned here at AMT Headingley with the talent of League and Union in Yorkshire to take advantage of that. Could you ever see that in the future?
Well, like I said earlier, if anything is possible, but probably not. But those type of games, the reason behind the Ed Slater work, and you know better than I, the work Kev's done is it's incredible, really. In memory of for Rob, and now in memory of, same with Doddy, and I think that just shows the strength of the game generally for me. The two codes coming together. We remember back in the day, we had a mixed sevens team. Union and League going to play at the Middlesex Sevens. Wigan played Bath. I think it was going back a fair number of years. So I think all those are I think they're great examples of the collaboration between the two codes. But I love Union, as I said, I love League as well. I love going to Australia. I went to the NRL bunker a few years ago in Sydney to watch about 3 games in a bunker, which is amazing. amazing setup, incredible. They had a medical bunker, technical, tactical bunker, and then a foul play review bunker. You know, all in the same room. They were separate rooms, they were, but it was just phenomenal. And I learned a lot about that, particularly from a TMO perspective. You know, so I think the collaboration is there, and I think will continue to be there. Whether we see a hybrid game, who knows? Yeah. But anything's possible.
More bunkers on the golf course.
Exactly.
Just finally, just to do it, I've got to go back right to the start. We'll go full circle on it. You said that you had some offers to go to league and didn't. So tell us a story. Where at that fork in the road, where could Phil Davies have gone to?
Clive Griffiths, who's a Welshman, was coaching at Warrington with Brian Johnson. He was a great fella, Brian, an Australian guy. People in Rugby League will know him. So I went up to. I played for Wales against France. It was in Cardiff on a Saturday. So Clive said, but anyway, I went up, I think, on the Sunday. So I went to Wilderspool on a Sunday where it was a bit. It was raining, it was foggy, whatever. So we had a great chat about it. But you know, at the time, I think Rebecca was only about 1 or 2, I think. I had a good job in South Wales. I had a really supportive chairman of a company who was really helpful. So I decided not to, and then God bless him, Dougie Lawton once. So I remember I met him in Widnes, and he had his 20 fags out on the bed, on the table, sorry, trying to explain rugby league defence to me. So we chatted a bit then, and you know, the way I enjoyed playing a game. I enjoyed playing, you know, I enjoyed playing football, if you like, you know, with hands and things, but I also enjoyed the physical element of it as well. But yeah, it was something. I don't regret not doing it, because I loved my playing with Wales, and then my coaching, particularly coming here first and foremost for that 10-year period, was amazing. So yeah, those were the 2 opportunities back in the day. But yeah, he showed me, what else he showed me? Is it Les Boyd? He was an Aussie prop. He showed me a video. He said, we're signing this bloke as well. I went, oh, okay. He would have been a bad teammate, Les Boyd. He was a strong man. He was a tough fella. But yeah, he showed me a video of Great Britain, I think, against Australia, with Les Boyd trying to fight the whole Great Britain Rugby League team. But yeah, but no, it was great. It was, you know, it's always nice to be asked to, you know, to look at a different opportunity in life, and I'm grateful for that. And God bless Doug. He was flipping it, because obviously I'd met him a few times with Jonathan, and you know, he was an unbelievable eye for talent, that fella. He was amazing. If you think of the players he signed, Martin O'Fire, obviously Jonathan, Debs, Moriarty over the time, and a few more. So yeah. Anyway, it was good. Good fun.
Very good. So what I've taken away from that was you could have joined one of the hardest packs that certainly was around then. When I think about players that were in that Warrington team then, I mean, they could fight. And that when you looked around Wilderspool, and for those who can remember going to Wilderspool, that you didn't feel at home there. It's the same way you felt like you walked through the gates here at AMT Headingley, you felt at home. You felt like you wanted a game of snooker when you got to Wilderspool, that big hall, that one of the touchlines. But yeah, fantastic memories, and been great to have you on Box 2, Phil. Thanks for watching Box 2 in association with Best Western UK. We look forward to welcoming you next time when we have our next guest on Box 2, and I hope you enjoyed listening to Phil and hearing those great stories across both codes of rugby.